Hello, everyone. Welcome, and thanks for attending our Discover Materials this winter question and answer panel with real-life material scientists and engineers. My name is Erin McNeill. I'm part of the Bragg Center for Materials Research at the University of Leeds, and we're a part of the Discover Materials collaboration of all these UK material science departments. I have a materials engineering degree, but I'm now based in the School of Physics and Astronomy here at Leeds. And I do lots of outreach and community engagement and basically just have a lot of fun with physics and get to meet lots of really cool people all over our local area. So this session is all about you, our audience. This is your chance to ask materials people any questions that you have, from studying at secondary school to university, to careers and how you find a job and what their jobs are like. So really, this is all about you. Now I know that there are lots of people in our audience, so I'd like to do a quick test of our Q&A box. You'll find it at the bottom of your screen. It says Q&A. If you guys can type in there who you are, where you're joining us from, I'd love to make sure that this Q&A box is working. So open it up, tell us who you are and where you're from. So if you're following along on social media, please share your own experiences using the Discover Materials Winter hashtag. If you have a good answer to one of the questions, tweet it out, okay? We'd love to hear what you think and any reflections you have on the session. Now, to get started, I'd love for you all to meet our panelists. So their cameras are off right now, okay? So start turning your cameras on. There we go, I see Chris. Awesome. There's Ella, there's Han. Cool, Monique, great. Hey, we're all here. That was a great reveal. Thanks, guys. Cool. And I'll shout out. Okay, so I'll give a shout out to Matthew, who's in Hong Kong. Hey, Matthew, what's up? Nice that you're here. So to get started, I'm going to ask each of our panelists, one by one, tell them their names first, to tell us who they are, okay, maybe where they're based right now and what they're doing for a job. Or if you're still in university, that's fine too. Okay, so I'm going to start with who's first on my screen. So Chris, tell us who you are, where are you from?
Hi, so I'm Chris Morris. I'm currently based in London, so I'm at Imperial College. I'm a PhD student there. My background is that I did a materials science and nuclear engineering degree at the University of Sheffield. I worked at Sellafield for a small period of time, and now I'm doing a PhD at Imperial. My work effectively tries to understand high temperature crack growth in welded nuclear reactor components. Similar to what you said, Erin, I do a lot of outreach, specifically a lot of nuclear outreach because I'm part of a nuclear PhD group, but I also do a lot of materials outreach because I think materials is really great and I hope that more people will study it.
That's great. Well, I'm glad you're here, Chris, because it sounds like you're the perfect person to take part in our panel. Okay, next person I can see is Monique. Monique, tell us who you are. Where are you from?
Hiya, so my name's Monique. I'm currently at Swansea University doing a PhD, and I'm looking into the corrosion of water mains and kind of how we can adapt our water to be able to reduce the discoloration of people's drinking water. And yeah, so this is my first type of outreach thing, so I'm a little bit, be kind.
Just be yourself, that's all you have to be. Okay, the next person I'd like to chat to is Han. Han, who are you? Where are you from?
Hello, everyone. I'm a lecturer in material science at Queen Mary, University of London. I did my PhD as well, mainly on polymers and composites. So my main working area or research area is spanning over all this lightweight, high-performance composites for like electric vehicles, how we can extend mileage of or per charge, or how to reduce the environmental impact by using a better designed materials. So yeah, I'm more than happy to be involved today.
Cool, yeah, great to hear from you. And last but not least is Ella. Ella, please tell us who you are, where are you from?
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name's Ella Podmore. I'm the only non-PhDer on this call, apparently.
I don't have a PhD either, so don't feel bad.
Amazing. I'm in the presence of greatness. This is awesome. So yeah, no, I studied a Master's of Materials Engineering at Manchester University. And I am currently the lead materials engineer for McLaren Automotive. So for those of you who don't know, McLaren Automotive is a supercar spin-off company from the Formula One team. And I'm responsible for all material related investigations here, everything from speccing materials in the design phase, right through till material related investigations on customer cars in the field.
Cool. I'm really very impressed with that. And I can't wait to hear some hot gossip about the F1. Hey, if you have any, that would be great. Okay, cool. So let's get started. So I'll just remind our audience, get your questions in. No question is a silly question. We'd love to hear from you. I know that there's some careers advisors in the audience. There are some high school students. There's some college students. So yeah, just ask questions. It's super cool. Okay, so I have a bunch of questions to ask you guys. The first one, okay, is I would like to hear, how did you guys decide to study material science and engineering? Okay, which is a big question, but can be a roundabout story. It's no problem. Would anyone like to tackle that one first?
Yeah.
Or Chris?
Yeah, so I have two reasons. One is more academic, the other is more maybe selfish. But I'll start. Reason one, I really, really enjoyed my A levels, chemistry and physics specifically. I was actually very engaged. And for me, when I was looking at the other engineering disciplines, it didn't feel like they were a natural continuation of physics and chemistry. It felt like they were more a continuation of maths, mechanics or something like that. So for me, it was because I really enjoyed physics and chemistry. The second reason is I did work experience at GKN, and there was a wise old materials scientist on the engineering team there. And he effectively told me that with 20 years of experience in materials science, he could walk into any aerospace company on the planet and get a job basically straight away. And that kind of job security sounded really, really good to me. So between those two reasons, I picked materials science, and I was very happy with that choice.
Cool. Thanks, Chris. Yeah, would anyone else like to add to that?
I'll add, yeah. So just to second Chris's opinion there, materials engineers are so sought after. And one of the attractive things that came with the degree for me is the fact that you can work in pretty much any sector. You're not limiting yourself to a particular type of industry. Everything is made out of something, and every big business corporation is going to need a manufacturing corporation is going to need a materials engineer. Similar to what Chris was saying as well, I did maths, chemistry, physics A level with computing AS. And I knew from an early age that I wanted to fix things. I wanted to be an engineer. I liked the problem solving aspect of it, but I absolutely adored chemistry. And through lots of different open days and resources, I was researching all the time to figure out like what kind of engineering degrees I could do. I went down the path of either a chemical engineer and a materials engineer. And it was actually the University of Oxford that did a fantastic open day and blew my mind with photovoltaics and floating superconducting magnets. And I was like, yes, I'm going to do this.
Oh, that's great. Monique, Han, would you like to share why you entered?
Hiya. So I kind of did a roundabout way. So I did first of all apply to do civil engineering. So I started the course and I thought, oh, you know what, this just isn't for me. I thought it would be more to do with, I don't know, the construction materials and stuff like that, more like how things are built and how they stay up, basically. So upon speaking to like a few people, they kind of said, oh, material science. And I was kind of a bit, oh, I've never really heard of it before, because it's not really, you just hear about the main things like chemical engineers or civil engineers. So obviously done a little bit of reading and found like at Swansea we could kind of swap courses in our first year. So I swapped over from civil to materials and absolutely loved it and just ran with it and still working on materials now.
Cool, that's great. I like the origin story. I'm really similar to you. I entered on a general engineering program in my first year and had never heard about MSc before, and then did one course in it and was like, this is my stuff. It was like linking bio with chemistry, with physics, with math, and I was just like, oh, this is like everything together. I didn't really have to choose one area. So yeah, I really identify with that, Monique.
Yeah, that's what I love as well. It's just a mix of everything, of chemistry, of physics, of maths even. You've got everything there that you'd want. Cool.
All right, Han, we won't leave you out. Go for it.
Wow, you guys got all the points I was planning to say. It is really a cover of everything. It's the how versatile this world is and how we can tune the single elements inside of something to change the macroscopic performance, to change the application, to fulfill different requirements for different applications. So that's really triggered my interest back then. I was like, oh, that was like magic, yeah? Just, well, it's not really black magic, but material science magic. We can do a lot of fancy things about.
Cool. Not black magic, material science magic. I love it. So we have some questions coming in. So actually, this is a really good place to start. So someone anonymous has asked, so are material science and materials engineering different, or is it just different names for the same thing? So I have an answer to this. So at my university, they taught material science, which is pretty much the same program as material science engineering, so MSc. Basically, one, you got a bachelor's of science degree, the other one, you got a bachelor's of engineering degree. So it's basically a lot of the same content, but just your degree certifications are different. So that's kind of one way to think about it. A lot like how, yeah, you get a lot of overlap between like the science courses and the engineering courses. So I think I tackled that one really quickly, but I'll just go with that. So we have a question from Emma. It says, which science do you think that material science most relates to?
I mean, I would say, honestly, I would say chemistry. To me, it feels like the logical progression. I mean, you get sort of a bit more microscopic than you do in chemistry, because you are looking at individual atoms rather than collections. But then again, like if you're doing metallurgy, you are looking at big collections of atoms. So I would say it's most similar to chemistry, I think.
I'd definitely say for my work that I do on corrosion, it's really, really chemistry based, because you have so many reactions going on at one time, interacting with, you know, liquids, and then interactions within metals as well. So personally, I would say it was really chemistry focused.
I would say the same, heavily based on chemistry. An understanding of physics definitely helped me, but it wasn't my favorite science. So when I got to university and discovered that we're learning about atoms and chemistry-based stuff, I was really excited.
Well, I guess I have to defend a little bit for my physics, yeah, because because well, to be fair, it really depends on which direction of the subject or the direction of research we're talking about. For a lot of things like material science, inside of material science, we mainly focus on physical property or physical interaction between them. And well, that's where we say where physics meets chemistry, where all the different subjects can be all utilized together to do material science. So I wouldn't really say which one is more important, but it depends on subject. Of course, one will be more dominating position than others.
So with a materials engineering degree, I started working in physics. I had a bit of like an imposter syndrome, like, oh my gosh, I didn't do physics. I don't know what they're going to be talking about. But when I came into the school, I was like, oh, this is just more physics-y material science. Physics is material science. It's just looking at things in a different way. So yeah, Han, I have to say too, physics is for me equally as important to chemistry. It's kind of like they work together really well. And then when you add biomaterials in, biology comes into play. Well, guys. Big things. So we have, so we kind of answered a question from Anonymous as well, saying what's more important to you, physics or chemistry? So I figured like we did that one pretty well. So I'm going to say that one's answered. So we have a question again. So are there any materials books that you guys can recommend, or maybe things that you can read up on, or things that you've really come across that have been good?
There's like two really common ones which everyone reads. There's like The New Science of Strong Materials, which has like the cover has like a foot going through some wood or something like that. And there's another really common one, but I have to Google it. I'll have a little look and get back to you.
Yeah, there's a really good textbook. I'll put it in the chat if anyone wants to see, and it's literally the holy grail of everything that you'd kind of want to see.
Is it Callister?
Callister, I think that's it. Yeah.
Yep. So Callister, that's the last name of the author who wrote the book. Every material scientist has a copy. My copy is right here under my desk that I still have from university, my first year. So there you go. I'm just going to grab it for you. And it's the thing that I brought from Canada with me in my luggage because it is that important to me. So there you go.
I second that. I still use that today. Everyone's sort of on their CAD and like computers, and I'm just like getting out this big textbook. Let me solve McLaren's problems here. Another cool book that I'd like to mention as well is I think it's called Radical Abundance, and it's talking about nanotechnology and basically building on that talk by Richard Feynman saying plenty of room at the bottom. And I think that was a really interesting thing to read to understand where materials is going. And I think it's quite interesting for people to have a little insight. Oh yeah, they fiddle with materials, whatever. But no, the amount of work that goes on at such a small scale and what that can do for components, industries, you know, computer chips, stuff like that is mind blowing. So that was a kind of something I read along university whilst I was getting through my degree, like, no, this is brilliant. This is great. A little inspiration.
We've also had, so both Alex and Matthew have suggested Stuff Matters by Mark Miodownik as a great, amazing material science or popular science book. So thank you for those recommendations.
That was the book that's name I couldn't remember.
Cool. Thank you, Chris. You've been vindicated. Okay, so we have another question. So saying, apart from research, what type of job roles can material science and scientists and engineers do? And where do you expect kind of like more jobs in the future going?
I think there's going to be so much work into battery and green energy in the future. So really harvesting and storing green energy, I think, is going to be one of the newest, biggest sectors that's going to kind of come about, especially with electric cars coming more, and anyone that wants to get into like solar or wind energy. I think that's a really, really important sector that we need more people to go into.
Absolutely. Just to add on the back of that, being in the automotive industry, a bit of story of how I got here. McLaren didn't have a materials engineer before I applied. They were simply accepting mechanical and automotive engineers. I have worked with cars. I sort of love F1 and stuff like that. So I applied anyway, and I got an interview, and I did my industrial placement year. And it was only from doing my 12 months as a placement student here that they realized the importance of having a materials engineer. And just like Monique saying, as technologies move towards battery powered cars, hybrid cars, everything is looking towards lightweighting. Now, suddenly I've gone from, oh yeah, she's quite a useful intern for us to have, to becoming a lead materials engineer, to developing a huge team. And I think the automotive industry is a little bit behind other industries such as aerospace in terms of what they appreciate from material science, but it's really catching up now. And I think the battery technology is the perfect way to sort of make that quite big.
Well, apart from all this, let's say, research, we do also have a lot of students graduated from materials program that actually enter in different sectors. Because in technical consultancies, for instance, a lot of companies, they do require not only the people with financial degree, with financial background knowledge, but also they need someone to understand the technology. So if investors want to invest some companies, they would like to someone from their inside of the company they can trust to provide them an analysis to say, well, this technology is great, so let's invest to them, or this technology from 10 years ago, forget about them. So that's really, we do have a lot of graduates actually entering that different sectors just because they can utilize the material science. And also not only the knowledge, but also the way of thinking and the logical analysis, the problem solving capability to be used in all different sectors.
For me personally,
yeah, go for it, Chris. Sorry.
I think that materials scientists are really useful, and engineers, as like interpreters between different engineering disciplines. Like my PhD is with mechanical engineers, and like most of my work is trying to teach a lot of the people in my research group material science and things like this. So I think that a material scientist is invaluable as an interpreter between different kinds of engineers. So I guess what we're talking about there is kind of management positions where you're trying to assimilate knowledge from a lot of different people, and I think material scientists are generally quite well purposed to do that.
To prepare for this panel, I had to look at like all of my LinkedIn contacts, which I haven't done for a long time, just to see where my fellow people that graduated in my year, where they went to. So yeah, a lot of stuff, a lot of people are working on green technology. So like we said, like batteries, energy saving, working in the like oil and gas industry. Lots of people were doing more sort of like what Monique's doing, so like water pipelines, stuff like that. A lot of people, like Han said, went into consulting and working at like technical companies. My first job was working in aerospace, so being a materials engineer for an aerospace company. And so it's kind of like we can do anything, which is great because often if you're a mechanical engineer, you'll become a mechanical engineer, chemical engineer, you'll be a chemical engineer. But for us, we can kind of come to the table with all of these different skills. So it's quite cool. And it's not something that I necessarily knew when I started the degree, but kind of saw as I progressed through. So I really appreciate that. And I say thank you, past Erin, for making a good decision. So versatile.
Erin, just a point to mention on that actually, because I'm remembering back, and it relates to the question of choosing between materials science, materials engineering. At Manchester, they did have the choice between the two. One thing that I wanted to sort of, if anyone's looking at applying to universities and doing these degrees, is that the materials engineering course that I ended up doing with the 4 years integrated masters actually offered a accounting module and an economics module in that, and I think a little bit more project work. But aside from that, like you said, it was the content was relatively the same. So if you are wanting to do something other than research and maybe wanting to join a corporation, I would highly recommend looking for those modules, because me going in not to an R&D role but into a engineering firm, sort of representing myself and doing what Chris says and liaising between these engineering departments, I found those 2 additional modules offered on that integrated masters course really, really useful.
That's a top tip for anyone going to university. Check out the optional modules, because there'll often be some really cool stuff that you wouldn't have expected you could take. And like Ella said, doing the accounting, doing the business stuff really diversifies your experience as an undergrad. And so it can only benefit you in the long run. So I think that's really cool. Okay, so we have a question. This is very specific. So they ask for, what is the most amazing biomaterial you've worked with? But let's ask the bio off and just say, what's the coolest material that you've either worked with or heard about, or like, wow, that's the coolest thing ever?
I'll go, but the coolest material is steel. It might sound like it's really boring, but there's so much depth to steel. Like, we basically completed aluminium and titanium 20 years ago, but steel, we're still making leaps and bounds. So although you probably think steel is really boring, steel is amazing. So not a biomaterial at all, but it's great.
You're just saying that because you went to Sheffield and that's where steel is.
That's part of it for sure. It helps.
I love that. I'm going to be slightly more boring. We get to work with some really fun, extravagant materials here. Like, quite a lot of our customers bespoke their cars. So quite a lot of what I'm dealing with in the lab is making sure that we can coat exhaust systems in 24 karat gold. We can stitch seats together with platinum, and we can have various discoloring titanium exhaust. So the requests are pretty mental. And I think the weirdest one, which is probably not in the bio category, is ostrich leather seats. Very different.
Is that for purpose, or is it functional, or is it like for...
Oh, it's absolutely for aesthetics, but of course we have to make sure that that material endures just the right amount of forces that our normal production material endures. But you can imagine the struggle.
I've got to also agree with Chris. I mean, steel is just the material that just keeps giving. I mean, it's so adaptable. You can just alloy it to so many different things. You can put coatings on it. You can hot roll it. You can cold strengthen it. All sorts that you can do with it. And it's, yeah, bias again. It's just a gift that keeps giving.
You see, that's exactly where the material scientist is coming from, with all this different tricks you can do with your materials. Yeah, you see, we're talking about the different composition you can tune your materials, and we're talking about different processes you can how to make your materials, and also from even a step forward, a step back, just at the very beginning, how you design based on your requirements, which elements should step in at which stage. So all of this is actually within the material science engineering region. So it's really, that's the beauty of, we're saying, I wouldn't say any amazing materials so far, because it's always, we keep developing new materials. We keep developing the new application. It depends on the requirements for the actual world application, the vehicle, electric vehicles, the wind turbine blade, the new aircraft we're talking about, to design the new materials and new processes, so we can all benefit from all this material science engineering. And that's really the amazing part of all this material science.
One of the professors that taught me was just like, materials, everything is made of materials. That's why material science is so cool. And you're like, it's actually that simple, isn't it? That everything's made of materials, so that's why they need material scientists. I'll share, so I hosted a question and answer panel like this back in the summertime, and we had someone who was working at the European Space Agency, and she said what they were working on was using like urea and like the rocks and dust found on the moon to make concrete. So basically making like concrete from pee, which I think is the coolest thing ever, that the moon could be built with pea concrete, which I think is like super cool. And that's not something that I ever heard of before. But also, what a cool, like that's like Han was saying, it depends on where you are. So if you're on the moon, guess where you're gonna have waste and rocks. So that's really cool. Okay, so that was a little bit divergent, but that's fine. So we have two kind of big questions from Matthew, who I know is in Hong Kong. So hey, Matthew. So this is a pandemic-related question. Okay, so Matthew's saying, like, during the pandemic, lots of the PPE had lots of like environmental issues, and so are there any sort of projects right now with MSc working on more like environmentally friendly PPE stuff, and yeah, and kind of like the decomposable or recyclable plastics or anything like that? So do you guys know of any cool research that's happening around that area?
Well, probably I should take it from the polymer and composites background, because that's one of the largest debates over the last few years about this plastic, how environmental friendly that is. And this is not really, to be fair, if we take a step back to look at the whole picture, the plastic waste, by nature, all of this small plastic, all the plastic bag you have is fully recyclable. And even before that, we can reuse it multiple times. It's never single used, okay? It's nothing really for all these plastic bottles, plastic bags should be single used. The single use is a term a human being put on top. And the problem of all the plastic waste ended up in the ocean, ended up in landfill, is a problem human being put in there, not really the materials by itself. So that's really a rather, I agree with Erin, it's a rather large question, to be honest, whether we're talking about environmental friendly, environmental sustainability of these materials. Back to the PPE, that's a little bit tricky one, because the PPE and all the masks is all this medical waste. So medical waste, when we're treating them, you cannot really use the normal recycling route to treat all the disposable waste, medical waste. So the most common route still goes through energy recovery, because all of these polymers, what the face mask you have is like a polypropylene, polyethylene, and all of them are made from oil, basically. And then you just burn it as oil. So you can recover a lot of energy in an environmental sustainable way. You control the environment without really toxic gases released to the environment. So that's really how people dealing with the medical waste most of the time. But the thinking about how we can tune the nature of these materials to make it decomposable or fully degradable, that is a really good, interesting direction, and people spending a lot of time, not necessarily on PPE, and nobody want to wear a face mask and then just by the end of the day start disappearing. So we do have a lot of work actually working on biodegradable composites or biodegradable polymers, which can be degraded in the composting area, in the composting environments, in the back garden within like 60 days. So there are plenty of work, but I guess that's linked to one of the other questions, people talking about this concept of life cycle assessment. So we do need to concern another thing about environmental issue from the very beginning of the raw materials cost, the environmental impact of the generating manufacturing stage, to the usage, and then the end of life treatment, how we're gonna do it. People start using plastic, people start using composites, lightweight materials, is because the usage actually saving the environment. People using plastic packaging because that will extend the food shelf life to a great amount of extent, and then we can actually preserve the food without really generating a lot of waste of the food. And that's really environmental friendly. And as long as we don't really randomly throwing it into the ocean, we are saving the environment, and we are actually recovering, reprocessing, recycling all these packaging materials as well.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Okay, so that was a very good question. Thank you very much, Matthew, for asking that question, and Hon for answering it. Okay, our next question, we'll go back to studying. So do you guys have any advice for someone who's starting like an MSc degree next year? So, or maybe just in general. So you've just finished, you're gonna enter your first year of university studying material science. What are the top tips?
I will say, if you want to go into industry, I highly recommend an industrial placement year. That's something that I completed in my third year of my master's. And the reason I say this is because I got placed at McLaren, and yes, they didn't have materials engineers, but what I found was so beneficial is that in those 12 months, I gained an understanding of what the automotive industry was really after. And so I realized, no secret, that the automotive industry was really battling with hem edge corrosion. And so as a materials engineer, I was like, right, I'll go back, complete my master's thesis on this particular topic and make me quite a desirable candidate for the automotive industry afterwards. So I think if you're wanting to jump straight into industry, into a company after your degree, then do have a look for this industrial placement year, because it gives you a purpose for your thesis and it makes you quite a desirable candidate to the company that you did it with after you've completed it.
I definitely reiterate what Ella's just said about making sure you, even if your course doesn't offer a whole year industrial placement, there's always summer placements going around, or I'm sure if you could speak to, I don't know, certain companies and stuff, they might let you go out for a week or 2 weeks. There's always flexibility if you do want to get industrial experience.
The other thing I would say, just a little bit more in general, is keep open-minded at the beginning of your study, because I know a lot of degree program, also at Queen Mary, we're reprogramming the the whole structure for the first year. A lot of university offer a very broad exposure of different case study for different area of material science. And that's really the best opportunity for you really to decide which direction you found the most interesting and you might want to spend a bit more time in the future. So keep open-minded for all this new knowledge, new things, new concept, terminology you never heard about, and find the most interesting one to yourself. And that's the best way to study.
Yeah, I think my only point to add here is just I think some people go into material science like after A levels with a very clear idea of I want to do photovoltaics or this or this. And the actual practical aspect of that, maybe they don't like so much. So I would say don't go in with a really strict think of, oh, I really want to get into optics, I'm going to do optics the whole way. Because often people find that they really enjoy other things. So I'd say keep as much of an open mind as possible and keep your options open, because there's no reason not to. And that lets you find the thing that you do really enjoy.
The top tip I always try to say to students is study the thing that you think is the most interesting thing ever. If you're super passionate about what you're learning about, it's a lot easier to learn because you're like, yeah, I can't wait to learn more about this. And it makes studying so much more fun and interesting when you actually just kind of follow your passion. And it's like what everyone was saying, just saying yes to opportunities as they come and really trust your instincts. If you really like something, keep going for it. I definitely also second the industrial placement, so a year in industry. A lot of people they kind of choose either between a year abroad or a year in industry. I actually did both. So I did a year in industry, but abroad. So I worked in Belgium for a year doing research and development at a company for material stuff. And that was great. I got to live abroad, get work experience, and didn't feel like I had to choose between the two. So I definitely recommend if you're trying to decide which one to do both. And those options are always available. So we have a question about MSc2 is how practical of a subject is it, or is it more theoretical?
For me, this sort of comes back a bit to the question of materials science and materials engineering. Like for me, the difference there is kind of like the materials scientist is more in the research world. The materials engineer is more in the practical world. Like a materials engineer arguably would take what a material scientist does and make it work in the real world. So I would say it kind of depends on what you're aiming for. If you do want it to be more practical, then you can aim yourself towards that world. If you are more interested in the details of atomic structures in martensite, then that's also something you can do. But there's definitely options there, I think.
I'd definitely say for the course at Swansea, I'd say it was probably about 50-50. So you'd have maybe some modules where you're in a lab and you have to write up a technical report, or you'd have some mechanical testing kind of modules. We had kind of like a chemistry module. So it really just depends on the uni and what courses they do offer. And I think it was really beneficial to have kind of those mechanical testing modules, because it's really a lot of the stuff that they do in industry as well that we got to kind of play around with and learn kind of on an undergraduate level.
Mechanical testing means breaking stuff. We should also say that. Fancy way of saying breaking stuff.
Yeah.
Ella, sorry, Han, go for it.
Sorry, I would say most of the university degree in the UK is always a mixture. So we do have a lot of practical sessions to actually let you to try it out, because all the theories from textbook are never true until you try it out to see if it's true or not. So you only trust yourself. Yeah, you only trust the one you break, and then to see this one is harder to break than the other. So that's really the part of all this. Well, we call it problem-based learning at Mary. So we do have this type of course. You do learn the fundamental basic understanding of the concept, and then you just go to the lab to have some fun, to break stuff, and then just you come back, say, oh yeah, that one is validated, that was true, and the other one is I'm not sure, I need to study a bit further on that.
Do you think?
Sorry, I missed the start of that. Was that directed to me, Erin?
Yes, it was. So is it theoretical or is it practical?
Oh, I think just like Monique was saying, I think it's very dependent on what university you go to. I was drawn to Manchester with its industrial links, with its history, with materials engineering. I would probably say a little less than 50-50 lab time. It was like 40% in the lab, 60% in the classroom. But I did get taught by a Nobel Prize winner, which I thought was absolutely amazing. And graphene was a big buzzword up there. So I sort of sacrificed a little bit of lab time to learn about that.
Okay, so we have 5 minutes left, and I want to make sure we have like a good wrap up. So the thing that I'd like to wrap up with, okay, kind of based on a question that we've gotten, but like, what is the one material or the one advancement that's happening right now that you're just like, I cannot wait. This is going to be the coolest thing when it happens. And it can be related to your industry or just kind of something that you know about.
I've just kind of said mine. I said mine. I love graphene. I think obviously being up in Manchester, there was a lot of hype around it, and it's kind of like we discovered it, we isolated it, and we were like, wow, this is so exciting. What can we do with it? How can we put it into industry? And I think the challenge of bulking it and making it thermodynamically stable in bulk material is something really exciting. It's something to watch out for. And it's a personal dream of mine to get something like a graphene infused composite onto some of our racing cars here. So
let's hope that Mercedes doesn't hear that, Ella. Okay, Han, you were going to speak next.
Well, I will say composites. I will say composite materials. So it's really the most interesting arena for me, because we just designed whatever way we want to make the materials. Yeah, just so you see all this high performance composites made out of carbon fiber for Formula One car, for aerospace applications, and all of this high performance one. And the most interesting part of that is also because it's lightweight and it's actually saving the fuels. And that's the environmental bit of all these materials, because we are actually saving the environment by using less fuel to burn all the journey. So that's really the composite is my pick for this question.
Monique or Chris?
I don't really have one as exciting as Ella's, but as far as what I think is exciting, what like my research group and everything is doing is on with self-healing films and really just technical and wacky coatings that we're putting on our steels to be able to preserve the life cycle of products and stuff. We work really closely as well with Tata Steel, so some of the things that some of the people in my research group are putting on steels is just crazy. So that's what's really exciting for me and self-healing.
So mine sort of going back to nuclear a little bit, but we're going to talk a bit about fusion. Now, I'm not going to get into when we'll have fusion because I think it's quite a long way away, but fusion used to be almost entirely a physics problem. Can we literally do the physics of fusion? And now we're generally past that. Now we're into the world of materials. And if you want a materials challenge that will be your job for the rest of your life, then fusion is the thing, because we have to build a reactor that has neutrons that have about 200 times more energy than in a fission reactor, and we have to do all this without actually building a reactor. So it's like nuclear is already a really challenging environment to build for, and now we have to build in this completely new environment. We have to be able to build an entire reactor using test materials that are about the size of a fist. Like, that is all we will have before we will build these reactors. So if you want a really challenging problem with that's really the cutting edge of material science, then fusion is absolutely that.
I think that's a perfect way to end our session. We heard from 4 different material scientists / engineers on 4 completely different types of materials and 4 different applications. And I really hope that that kind of shows the variety of things that you can get up to with an MSc degree. What's really cool is that you can study anything, and as soon as you enter into the program, you kind of learn that the world is your oyster, and anything you're interested in has a materials link, which is really cool. And so for that, I have 1 minute to say thank you to our panelists. So I'll give a round of applause. Thank you, panelists. Thank you to our awesome audience as well for asking questions. That's always very helpful in these types of sessions. And so if you have any other questions, just get in touch with us on social media. You can use the Discover Materials Winter hashtag. We'll be there answering stuff. I'll kind of type a few answers now in the question and answers that we didn't get to. And I see that Chris has now appeared on the screen. And so Chris is going to take over the session and make some cool announcements or some fun announcements. So I will say goodbye, and our panelists can say goodbye, and we can go off cam. off the video. So thank you, everyone. Chris, it's over to you.